This week on the Four Rivers Ag Report, can we amend the amendment process and get a farm bill already? We play with some numbers that may or may not change. And misery loves company, and boy, do we have a lot of company. And this brings new meaning to the term asphalt jungle. All that and much more on the Four Rivers Ag Report. Welcome to the Four Rivers Ag Report. I'm Fred Peralta. Well, the cherry crop in Door County, Wisconsin is reported to be a total washout, and cherry crops in the Lake Erie area aren't far behind. And the maple syrup is not flowing out of Wisconsin due to an early warm spring. You don't have to look too far to see that we're not alone in feeling the heat with this year's crop. The most productive crop out there seems to be amendments to the Farm Bill in the Senate. One source identified approximately 300 amendments that had been offered to the Senate bill that came out of the Senate Ag Committee. The official number is more like 73. At the time of this taping, we're down to 47 left. So maybe by airtime, they'll be through them all and be ready to vote. This is me not holding my breath. So since we're not sure exactly what we're going to see, and especially since the House hasn't even touched it yet, some economists have been working with what little information they have. I talked to Gary Schnicke about the proposed 2012 guarantees compared to the 2011 crop guarantees. Gary, you did a little summary here of projected prices for corn crop insurance based on 2012 versus 2011 guarantees. What did you find?
Yeah, what we found this year is I'll just go over corn. This year, the projected price is going to be a bit lower than last year. The projected price for corn is $5.85 for corn versus $6.01 in 2011. Mm-hmm. But most people are going to have higher guarantees this year because they're going to use the trend adjustment, which adds about somewhere between on average probably about 10 bushels to the guarantee. So right. Overall, the guarantees are going to be about the same this year as last year. And the cost will be a little bit less. So we're getting about the same coverage this year as last year, which is generally a pretty good thing. We have guarantees at pretty high levels, so profits. We've got a pretty good safety net this year.
So with the potential of a down crop this year, the 5-year rolling average actually would benefit the farmers, correct?
Yeah, if we have a down year this year, the trend adjustment increases the yields that are used in their guarantees. So yeah, they have to have less of a bushel loss to cause a payment, or their yields can be higher and they still get a crop payment.
So that's just one of the things we're looking forward to, maybe. What other, you've been keeping an eye on the what's going through the Farm Bill, or what's in the Farm Bill at the moment, and that changes second by second. What sort of things have you been noticing that could affect the business of farming?
Yeah, the Senate Ag Committee passed a bill, and that bill was a revenue product, or revenue insurance, and it's a revenue guarantee where farmers would select between a county and a farm option. That would provide protection in cases of a multi-year price decline. So this year we had prices go down to high $3 range. The ARC, or ag risk coverage, would make payments. So that's what's currently there. The amendments haven't done too much to that basic format in the Senate Ag Committee. The Senate Ag Committee bill, some of those amendments have put in payment limits. One put in payment limits for marketing loan gains.
Okay.
Another one put in a income, just a gross income check, or for crop insurance. So their adjusted gross income has to be less than $750,000 to receive all of the subsidies associated with crop insurance. So far, most of those amendments haven't changed the basic revenue program.
So some of the sticking points I understand are regional in nature, are they not?
That is correct. Um, the Farm Bill takes away direct payments, and direct payments, just to give you a feel, in Illinois, direct payments are fixed payments that occur no matter what, are about $20 to $25 per acre on average. For some of them, like rice, the payments were closer to $100, and cotton had, and peanuts had payments in the $40 range. Well, keeping those, if you go to a revenue risk management program, it's hard to keep their payments at the levels that were in part of the direct payments. So that's one of the big issues that is being struggled with right now.
So Gary, overall, do you think the farm bill that looks like it may be coming out of Congress, would that be basically status quo for farmers in an area, or would it for business wise, or is it something that farmers really need to take a look at and carefully navigate the waters here?
Yeah, well, this bill will provide protection against, or the Senate bill will provide multi-year price protection, and it would generally be a good thing, that protection. What will happen out at the House side? A good question. It looks like they're looking more at a target price program, so that would be different sort of protection than is offered by the Senate Ag Committee bill.
So, in other words, who knows?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that we can say with for certain is that the Farm Bill this time around is going to have less payments in it than the 2008 Farm Bill. So on average, farmers in Illinois, we're looking at something between $20 and $25 per acre, direct payment wise. The payments from the ARC program would be probably on average in the $13 to $18 an acre range. So less payments, not always in all years, and no matter what the House or Senate does, something along that line is likely to happen.
Okay, so change is happening whether we like it or not.
That's right. Your direct payments are you can be pretty certain that those are gone.
Well, thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
Well, the NASS released this week's crop survey. The numbers were so bad, I thought, who would you rather hear them from? Boring, old, bald me or Monica? I gave them to Monica to report. Monica?
Thanks a ton, Fred. I'm Monica Becker. Much of the state finally got some rain last week, although not enough, and not enough around here. Precipitation averaged a little less than an inch around the state, although we saw about half that if you were lucky. The East-Southeast district averaged a little less than half an inch of rain as the storms all tracked further north. That, of course, didn't help the soil moisture. Statewide, the topsoil was rated 24% very short, 46% short, and only 29% adequate. Subsoil was rated 25% very short, 50% short, and 25% adequate. In our area, you guessed it, we're drier. 49% very short, 33% short, and only 17% adequate. Subsoil is 47% very short, 38% short, and 15% adequate. Statewide, corn is reported to average 42 inches in height, and 5% of the crop is silking. All the soybeans have emerged, and 3% of the crop has bloomed. Locally, we're ahead of the game at an average height of 53 inches for corn and 7% silked, and 4% of the soybeans have bloomed. The state crop conditions for corn reports 4% very poor, 9% poor, 35% fair, 45% good, and only 7% excellent. Soybeans also come in at 4% very poor, 10% poor, 39% fair, 43% good, and 4% excellent. But the lack of rain isn't the only thing that you may be worried about. The western corn rootworm is causing problems in Cass County, Illinois. Todd Gleason reports on what may be the spread of Bt-resistant population, one of the most costly insects in the Corn Belt.
A lot of the Illinois corn crop looks really good. The weather may change that, but for now, despite the shortfall in rain, it's not bad, or at least most of it isn't. However, there is a field along the Illinois River near Beardstown that isn't faring so well. Bt resistance may very well have arrived in Cass County.
This was a field that had been planted to a Bt hybrid that offers protection, or it should offer satisfactory protection against corn rootworm larval feeding. The plants were under pretty intense moisture stress. It's been a hot and dry spring thus far in the state. The leaves were rolled very tightly. The adult beetles were feeding on the epidermis of the corn leaves, which will add further stress to those plants. This feeding on the leaves is pretty common when the beetles don't have any pollen, don't have any silks to feed upon, and so they were really causing quite a bit of injury to the leaves. But more importantly, after we began to dig up some roots, it was pretty clear that some very significant pruning had also taken place on those root systems.
On the 7th day of June, a full month earlier than would have been expected, in a hybrid that should have been protected by its Bt modification, a full node of roots, sometimes 1.5 to 2 nodes, was missing. It could be Bt-resistant western corn rootworm.
Well, I think it could potentially. Last year, a researcher at Iowa State University published the first report confirming the evolution of field resistance to this Cry3BB1 protein. This was the protein that hit the marketplace for the first time back in 2003.
Following that report, there were fields in northwestern and north central Illinois said to have significant western corn rootworm feeding injury last year. Results of a bioassay to determine if those insects are in fact resistant to Bt corn are due in August. For University of Illinois Extension, I'm Todd Gleason.
Now, fireworks and dry grass don't mix. The 4th is just around the corner, and the dry weather is causing concern for local officials. Seisha Gailliard reports.
And this type of crunch noise is normal to hear from hay, but it's not the type of sound that you would think to hear from grass. And it's just another example of why this type of dryness is causing a concern.
Conditions being as dry as they are, the chances for a fire rapidly progressing into a large problem increases significantly. With the little rain lately and high winds, it's dried out the ground to a level where a small fire, campfire or a controlled brush fire, can become uncontained.
Last week, a brush fire in Sullivan caught the fire department's attention. A Sullivan man started a fire in his backyard, walked away, and minutes later,
And the wind had pushed the fire clear across the field.
Cody Bonebreak, who works the open hayfields around the county, knows a fire like this is all too easy to start. He says this summer, the grasslands are drier than last year.
You could probably throw a cigarette out the window and catch the land on fire if it's just because it's so dry out.
But it's not just cigarettes that can cause that outcome. Fireworks pose a problem too.
We had a fireworks display last Friday. As you can see from the small burned areas, the remnants that come down just swallow sparks with everything as dry as it's been lately. Some of the risk with taller grass, this is really dry at the tip. If you have a small fire that starts at the base of it, if it's wind driven, fire can rapidly take an area in this size here within a matter of seconds.
With this dry weather, the grass can be very flammable, especially with the 4th of July coming up with the fireworks. So we want to make sure if you're out shooting off fireworks, have a fire extinguisher available.
The fire captain advises you to avoid from starting fires, but if you must start a fire, you need to be more cautious than usual. I'm Seisha Gailliard in Moultrie County for WEIU Newswatch.
And finally, an Ohio State University scientist is finding a new use for an old parking lot. He's raising crops on it. Joe Kovach has created a test garden for fruit and vegetables in an old asphalt parking lot in Wooster, Ohio. He's raising kale, apples, peaches, basil, strawberries, and other crops in high tunnels, raised beds, and pots, and has even removed some of the parking surface to plant in the ground. He's found that the asphalt helps moderate the heat in many of the plants. The control peach trees lost much of its crop when its cold snap came through, but not the peach tree in parking spot 54. He's excited about the research, but is far from having enough data to draw conclusions. One problem that he hasn't solved: the rabbits see his plot as a drive-by veggie joint. You'd think they'd stop by to ask, "What's up, Doc?" And that's all, folks. I'm Monica Becker.
We're looking to start a new segment called Greenhorn Acres with Monica, and we're looking for farm experiences for Monica to, well, experience. Gathering eggs, milking cows, feeding cattle, walking beans. I'm not guaranteeing that she won't show up with the wrong kind of shoes, but if you can think of something that she could learn from, let me know at weiu@weiu.net. Reference Fred-Greenhorn Acres, or call me at 217-581-7245. I really appreciate it. Not sure about Monica, but I will really appreciate it. And with me now is our good friend Dave Shiley from the Extension Office. And Dave, what's new with you?
No, that's really bad, Fred.
Okay, guilty. I understand there's a seminar about sheep and goat raising.
Yes, it is. We have one up in Onarga coming up on July 7th, and it's a particularly important tool for sheep and goat producers to manage internal parasites, particularly the worm called the barber pole worm.
Barber pole worm? That's
Yes.
the first time I ever heard of that.
Yeah.
So, so is parasites a real problem with those herds?
They can be, and they cause death of the animal.
Oh,
so
that's pretty serious.
Yeah, so pretty serious. So in the past, those livestock producers have just wormed the entire herd. So this technique is going to help them select those animals that need to be wormed and not treat the others.
When they treated the whole herd, that probably caused resistance issues, didn't it?
It did, just like when we apply any kind of pesticide to that's not really needed, then we develop a resistant in that worm population, and then those eggs, of course, like all worms, are deposited out in the pasture and then transferred to other animals, and all of a sudden you've got a big problem.
Then you have a big problem. So
Right.
This technique is used to help identify specific animals that need treatment, and then a specific treatment plan for those animals?
Well, it's mainly, the treatment plan is still going to be the same,
Okay.
but only about 20 to 30% of the animals in a herd carry about 70 or 80% of those parasites. So we're just treating those animals by looking at their eyes, actually, to see if they're anemic.
Oh, okay.
And so you're basically looking at a color chart, but because it requires some interpretation, it requires some training.
Okay. So there's an art to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So that's it for our, if I had a goat to help me keep my lawn down, which isn't a problem right now, I might also use it to trim the weeds around the garden. What's up? Isn't it this time of year for some insect pests to come in?
Right, and so our gardeners and garden producers really also need to be doing some scouting, and rather than just applying an insecticide because they had a problem last year. So,
what sort of pests should they be scouting for right about now?
Well, we're kind of past if you're growing any kind of cucumber, like a squash or pumpkin, then the squash vine borer is one that you probably need to look at. The cucumber beetle was out early, and because of the warm spring.
Right.
So, but squash borers, the tomato hornworm and tomato fruitworm are all insects that can be a problem, and mites, spider mites. So.
I know my blushing rose of Sharon is a Japanese beetle magnet.
Oh, sure, and they're on their way too.
They're on their way, aren't they?
Right.
Okay. So you should be scouting, bushes and trees and your vegetable gardens. What's the best time to scout your garden?
Well, during the early morning is probably best. You can. There's some techniques for looking at squash vine borers, putting out boards. They like to hang out underneath the leaves, so you can put out some boards. They all will gather in there at night and flip that board over, and then you can, you know, yeah, and you can do some mechanical control, aka just squash them at that point. So rather than even using an insecticide.
Who needs high blood pressure medication?
That's
just
right.
Squash the squash the bug.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So it's that time of year. There's not a lot we can do right now other than sit and wait and watch and hope for rain. You know, what could a homeowner or a gardener be getting ready to do?
Well, one of the things, because of the lack of rain, if you haven't put any kind of mulch down, certainly around your tomatoes and peppers, it'd be a good idea to mulch with straw, so you can maintain if you're in watering, you don't want that water to fluctuate, because then blossom end rot is going to be a problem when we have fluctuations of wet and dry from watering. So mulching is going to help reduce that kind of issue. And then scouting and not applying those insecticides unless you really need them.
Okay. So in summary, check your gardens, and if you have sheep and goats,
come to get online. You can register online and plan and think about attending that July 7th workshop up in Onarga, Illinois, on using that new FOMACHA worm monitoring training.
That would be a winning word on the spelling bee next year, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Now, last week we showed part one of Cameron Craig's documentary on the Dust Bowl, how it happened and how it affected the people who lived through it. After it aired, it rained a little bit. So this week we're going to show part two. We'd like some more, please. Here's part two of Stinging Dust and Forgotten Lives.
Virgin land would soon be violated. It was a divine doctrine that the civilized would be given the opportunities provided by nature.
Year by year, the farmers who lived on soil whose returns were diminished by unrotated crops were offered the virgin soil of the frontier at nominal prices. Their growing families depended more on lands, and these were dear. The competition of the unexhausted, cheap, and easily tilled prairie lands compelled the farmer either to go west and continue the exhaustion of the soil on a new frontier, or to adopt intensive culture. Thus, the demand for land and the love of wilderness freedom drew the frontier ever onward.
What was not considered in the equation thus far was the expense of maintaining the land. Larger equipment and more hands would be necessary to prepare, plant, and cultivate the fields. But hidden deep for tens of thousands of years in the vastness of the plains was its character. Farmers of the East were aware of the climate pattern of their original land. Rains were common along the colonial East. If the rains stopped, farmers simply did what previous generations did to save their dwindling crops. Till the soil to bring moisture-laden soil to the top, without the fear of it drying before the next rain. In the new landscape, farmers practiced what they knew would work during dry periods. But the rain seldom came in time. They were unaware of the unpredictability of the skies. So they resorted to what they did in the East by tilling deeper to bring the much-needed moisture to the roots of their crops. The result was devastating. Their method from the East failed. The relief they believed would come never did. Eventually, the rains came back. Relief returned, and fear subsided. But for how long? At the turn of the century, the economy prospered. Industry provided evidence of growth. Cities boomed with success. The vast lands of the Great Plains were developed to supply the demand of urbanites, clearing the grasses from the fertile soils below. The Great War further demanded wheat and other crops to support military campaigns of the British, the French, and eventually Americans battling the Germans on the Western Front. Because of the demand, crop prices were at their highest. Farmers finally reaped the benefits of the land. More land was needed to supply the elevated demand. Technology made it possible. Teams of horses turned into mechanized creatures tearing through the earth. More land than ever before could be converted into fields. The future was golden. But looming behind the happiness of the farmer's success was a disaster beyond human comprehension.
We will have more segments as the summer goes along, but right now we have a bit of a request. Cameron Craig is a very accomplished guy. He's a geographer and a documentarian here at Eastern Illinois University. In 2008, he and a student produced this compelling documentary, Stinging Dust and Forgotten Lives, that focused on humanity's struggles with the harsh conditions during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. To bring the film closer to home, he's looking for your help for a new documentary that will highlight the experience and the observations of the inhabitants of Central Illinois. We are looking for personal stories, accounts, or pictures of what it was like to live in Illinois when the stinging dust filled the air. If you or someone you know lived in Illinois during the Dust Bowl, call us at 217-581-5956 or send us an email at weiu@weiu.net and let us know how you can help us tell your story for future generations. And that's it for this week. Work hard, be safe, and enjoy the beautiful sunsets. I'm Fred Peralta, and thanks for watching the Four Rivers Ag Report.